Goodness gracious. There's so many good things you said. Recently been in dialogue with some of these Christian apologists who are kind of wanting to make Jesus special and nothing else like it, or try to divorce him from anything analogous. So we ended up emailing, having an email sent to Egyptologist Mark J. Smith, and I'm sure he's a wonderful Egyptologist. But we asked him about comparisons, and his response kind of, to me, made me think he isn't really aware of even the New Testament narrative very well, because he kind of made it sound like he thinks Jesus like rose himself from the dead. And he said, but in the Osiris myth, it was actually Isis who magically, through some type of ritual, resurrects Osiris from the dead. And I go, like, immediately in my mind, I went, no. The New Testament, I mean, you might find a passage or two that tries to imply that Jesus had the power, but like, it's God who raised Jesus from the dead. So it wasn't Jesus who raised Jesus from the dead, but like, it's like his father who then raises him with pneuma, by the way, which is a whole nother, like, it's a stoic kind of idea that is a physical entity that gives him presence, because he's not flesh and blood, like Paul says. It's a pneuma body, like a glorified pneumatic body. Later, you kind of see it more solidified in the flesh in Luke and John, where it's like eating and drinking. But the question I have is, first on that, it sounded like he kind of didn't know that, so he didn't think to compare them.
Mark Smith of Oxford, yes, is a brilliant Egyptologist, and he knows his shit. So he knows what's going on. I would say that most Egyptologists aren't going to touch this topic because it's a scary topic. It's a topic that makes people angry. The direct connections are hard to make. And so no, I'm not going to talk about that. And that doesn't surprise me. It's fine. Mark Smith specializes in Osiris, and he's written a book. I think it's called Remembering Osiris. I have to look and see what the title is. And he focuses on the idea that the dead Egyptians call themselves Osiris. So if I died in ancient Egypt in the New Kingdom, like the 18th dynasty or something, and I had a coffin made for me, my coffin would say Osiris, and then it would put my title, a professor at UCLA. Like, it would actually do that, and then it would put my name, and I would be identified and associated with the god Osiris, not Hathor, not Isis, even though I'm female. And Mark Smith and I have gotten into little debates, very friendly debates about whether or not I, as a dead person, have actually become Osiris, or whether I am of Osiris. And Mark Smith is of the opinion that I have not syncretized with Osiris, but I am of and kind of connected to Osiris, even though there's no preposition N in the text always. Sometimes there is, sometimes there isn't. I am more of the opinion that I meld with Osiris during my death transformation. Even I, as a female, must become Osiris, because it is only through Osiris that I find my transformation. And I've written a number of articles on this, and you can find them on my webpage, which you already pointed out. And I actually argue that females have to have a kind of gender shift, or even sexuality shift, become masculine, and then be reborn as a male Osiris figure, because it is only through, and I'm going to get a little sexy here. Is everyone prepared?
I love it.
Okay. So the Egyptian creation mythology is very different from a Christian or Judeo-Christian Islamic creation mythology. Egyptian creation mythology is incredibly sexual. It's, nuts and bolts, male and female. And here's how it works. The god Atum, who is like the proto-sun god, is floating around in darkness, infinite space, infinite materiality, hidden space. And he then wants to create himself. And to create himself, he gains an erection. He uses the female part of his self, the Jeret, ends in a T, like Smurf, Smurfette, right? He uses his feminine part, his hand. He has sex with himself. He creates an ejaculation that awakens himself, that he then, in some texts, actually brings into his mouth like an autofellatio. It's complicated. And then he sneezes and spews out his own essence to create a void of empty space filled with light. And in this empty space filled with light, he then he then creates with that spewing and spitting, he's created two divinities who then have real sex with each other and create two more divinities who are the earth and the sky. And then they have sex with each other and they create four more divinities who are Osiris, Seth, Nephthys, and Isis. And you have the 9 gods of the first creation, the Ennead, so-called. And this is the first divine creation. It is explicitly sexual. And so Atum creates the world through that explicitly sexual way of being. And then Osiris, who is in very many ways the recipient of this creation mythology, is at the beginning, at the end, the Alpha and the Omega, if you like, right? Atum does it, and then Osiris will do it as well. And then Osiris is there recreating himself in the same sexual manner. So the Egyptians show that when there's very explicit, if you wanted to Google like Flickr images or something of Dendera roof temple of Osiris being reborn, you will find a cartoon-like imagery of Osiris being dead. He's been put back together with all of his many pieces by Isis, wrapped together into the first mummy of all of Egypt's creation. And then he starts to awaken. And the awakening is his erect phallus. And you see that in the imagery. It rises up out of the wrappings like a Christmas tree. It's like this beautiful like thing that is erect out of him. And then you see his hand reach out, right, to the phallus. It's in the most sacred part of the temple on the roof where the sun strikes it. And then you see him acting with the hand. And then you see Isis as a bird landing on the penis and being inseminated to create Horus, right? And then you see Osiris rising up out of the bed. And it's this whole series of cartoon-like figures, not cartoon in a silly way, but serial, that it's one thing to the next thing to the next thing. And you see Osiris's recreation in that seasonal way. What I'm trying to tell you with all of this and connecting it back to Mark Smith is that the Egyptians understood Atum, the sun god, and Osiris, the grain god, the season god, to be sexually rejuvenating, so that they did die. The sun died every night, went into the west, and is reborn in the same sexual way. Osiris dies every winter and then comes out again with the spring season. And when a human died in ancient Egypt, they said, "Oh, you are like Osiris. We will name you as such." Whether Mark Smith is right and it's Osiris of Kara, or whether I'm right and it's Osiris Kara, it doesn't really matter, because we're both connecting with that mythical tradition of sexual reawakening to connect to the human so that we can be reborn after death. So that is, you can't get more visceral in terms of the creation mythology. And it's something that draws people in, and they're like, I want to be reborn. I will die. Humans know they will die. And in the ancient world, there is nothing more apparent. I think going through a pandemic, we realize this as well. We're closer to death now than we have been for a good 100 years as a human species. This in the ancient world was ever present. And so to know you were going to die, to see your parents dying young, your children dying young, to have a religion that connects with that great trauma and pain, that ever-present human wound, and helps you to overcome it in some ways, is very powerful. And that's why I believe this Egyptian mythology was so powerful to people, and why Christianity then uses so much of this Egyptian mythology, but doesn't explicitly tell you that they're doing it. Because if they did, it would ruin it. It would take away the differentiation. Oh no, that's not our administration. That's the old administration. We are different.